Hello and welcome. I am Kemuel Pascal and you are viewing One and One here on WESN Content Capital. Well, it has been just over 7 months since the people of Tobago overwhelmingly elected the Progressive Democratic Patriots to the helm of the THA. In this episode of One and One, we will be speaking with Chief Secretary and Secretary in the Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy, Mr. Fali Chavez Augustin, to find out how have they fared over the last 6 months. Mr. Augustin, hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me, and good day, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for having us in this conversation, having Tobago in this conversation.
Now, you would have assumed office back on December 6th, 2021. How has that transition been for you, moving from the minority, also getting married along the way, to now being at the helm of the THA, essentially?
The first few weeks were rough, to be honest, because the election was on December the 6th. We got sworn in. I got sworn in on December the 9th. The rest of the secretaries got sworn in on December the 10th. I got married on December the 12th. And then I had my first day on the job on December the 13th, Monday, December the 13th, first day on the job. And so that transition and being able to, and having to pick one's life up and switch gears in terms of responsibilities and requirements took quite a bit from me personally. It took a lot from the other secretaries too. I have always pointed out that unlike some jurisdictions like in the US, where there's a transition period, where the election date is fixed, but also the swearing-in date is fixed. And there's a period in between by which the incoming government sets up their transition team to allow for a smooth transfer. That happens in other jurisdictions, but that does not happen in our jurisdiction, which means that one has to govern and transition at the same time. One has to solve problems that they meet in the office. One has to fix challenges, while at the same time provide adequate governance solutions and be able to get on task with the mandate given by the people. But the past 7 months has also been rewarding, because over the past 7 months, we have been able to achieve quite a lot in terms of the policy frameworks that we put in place for the island. For example, over the 7 months we have been in office, we have changed dress code policy. We have decolonized the dress code policy, as a matter of fact. Over the last 7 months, we have raised the salaries of CPEP and URP workers. Over the last 7 months, we have changed the policy surrounding food cards and the period for which you will get the food cards, and also the amount of monies we will give per food card. Over the last 7 months, we have taken a decision to end the backlog when it comes to people who have applied for grants, home improvement grants. In fact, we have given out close to 700 home improvement grants within 7 months. We have also taken a decision to clear the backlog of people waiting on cataract surgeries. We have embarked on an aggressive Let We Fix This program, where in every single electoral district we have gone out, we have done an assessment, an analysis rather, of all the works to be done per electoral district. Those works have been quantified, scopes developed, specifications developed, bill of quantities developed, and many of those works are actually being tendered as we speak. Over the last 7 months, we have engaged on the most aggressive school repair program in the history of the THA. In fact, we are spending a little over $21 million to repair our schools during this July-August vacation, and that figure may increase slightly thereabout. Over the last 7 months, we have also moved full speed ahead in terms of engaging the Caribbean Development Bank with respect to funding for building out the new Scarborough Secondary School, which we hope to be the Caribbean region's first truly smart school. And we are at the consultative phase. We have already done the site visits with all the technical people from CDB, the engineers. We have been meeting with these teachers and the teachers at the school, and we are almost there with being able to get that bill out. Over the last 7 months, we have also put in place a committee that will treat with special needs. And for the first time, Tobago will have a school dedicated to what we call those who are blind and deaf or visually impaired and deaf. And they were housed in a very small space annexed to the Bonaccord Government Primary School. They will be having their own facility up at Signal Hill and within the same region as Happy Haven. Happy Haven treats with people who occur along the spectrum. And so what we'll have is for special needs, blind and deaf, and being able to treat with some of those other special needs in this purpose-built school. That too, we are preparing to start. And so there's so much that is being done. We have Little Tobago undergoing the only major renovation it has had in more than a decade. I mean, it's quite mind-boggling what you have been able to achieve over 7 months in office.
Now, let's look at finances. You sit at the helm of the THA, being the Chief Secretary, and you also sit at the helm of the Division of Finance, Trade, and the Economy. Now, you would have presented a $3.97 billion budget that you are hoping that the central government actually gives you come budget day, whenever that may be. And you would have outlined quite a number of things. In fact, you looked at the Tobago economic outlook, and you mentioned things like Tobago's GDP fell by some 7% back in 2020, and it's rebounded somewhat by 4% in 2021, which you attributed to the reopening of the economy and also government spending. What are some of the plans by way of the economy that your administration has in place over the next financial year?
But before we get to the next financial year, one will appreciate that the requirements for funding the Tobago House of Assembly falls between 4.03% and 6.9% of the national budget, as per the Dispute Resolution Commission's recommendations that were accepted by the Parliament, accepted into policy, working policy rather as a law by the government way back in about 2000. And so that ask of just over $3 billion is really commensurate with the national budget being somewhere around between 57 and $58 billion, and the THA receiving 6.9% of that. That aside, though, we understand that to fund all the things we want to do, that we desire to do, even if we get 6.9% from the central government, to fund it, it requires the THA to raise monies on its own, to raise funds on our own outside of the subventions that we receive from the sovereign. And that's why we are looking at areas like the study park quarry and how we build the study park quarry out to ensure that we could facilitate the kinds of development that we need on the island, the capital development expenditure that we need on the island. We are looking at this very moment the issue of the air and sea bridge. It's a vexing situation. People just cannot access the island. There's no way we can make claim for tourism and people can't get here. That, you know, the flights are just not coming, and I just don't understand why Caribbean Airlines, why that airline isn't returning to pre-COVID number of flights, which was somewhere between 24 and 30 flights per day. That's flights going and coming. We are now at 12 flights, and which is 6 one way, 6 the other. That is not sufficient when it comes to treating with movement of people to and from the island. And so we took a decision to pay for the opening of the airport in Tobago up till 2 a.m. in the morning to facilitate Caribbean Airlines being able to operate late into the evening. We have dispatched, I think this week, we dispatched a letter that went out to Airport Authority, more or less indicating to the Airport Authority that we are ready to engage them on this program. By the end of this week, Caribbean Airlines will get a communication from me that will indicate the steps we are taking in ensuring that we can open up the sea bridge. Because when you have a service-driven economy, it requires the movement of people to and fro on the island. No service economy moves without there being adequate movement of people. No tourism-based economy moves without there being flights available to take people to the island or the destination. It just makes sense. And so we're working assiduously on that. In the new fiscal year, we are looking at a greener sort of budget. We're looking at, and you will appreciate that the budget that we're working on now is one that we inherited, because budget for the THA is done in June.
Yes.
And we get subventions as of the beginning of the fiscal year in October. And truth is, we did not have the opportunity to do our own budget. Now we have the opportunity to do our own budget. We have been looking at how to spend our resources to invest in cleaner technology, cleaner energies, how to invest in green initiatives. We have been looking at the port of Scarborough and developing Scarborough into a city. We have looked at the issue of public safety as a critical component. We have also looked at rebranding for tourism and marketing for tourism and getting our visitors to come here and looking at new source markets that are non-traditional to the Tobago space. We have explored the issue of the diaspora, because there are more Tobagonians living outside of Tobago than living on the island of Tobago. And certainly they want to contribute, certainly they want to be a part of what we have to offer and to invest in their home state. And so it's quite a lot that we're trying to do at the Division of Financial and Economy. We are just about completing the matrix, or the matrices that we are going to use to give to every single division so that they will be guided throughout the fiscal year, that these are the projects that they are to implement and they are to get on work as soon as the bell rings to start the new fiscal year.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
So let's now look at some of the things that you would have mentioned. So you stated in your budget presentation that some of the urgent policy actions that you would have undertaken are in the areas of health, housing, food, education. You would have particularly paid attention to debt management, and also you would have made mention of support for businesses and small businesses in particular. Can you give us an idea as to what are the fine details of those sectors that you would have, the policy measures rather, that you would have undertaken coming in the last 7 months?
For debt management, we established a debt management committee that is constantly reviewing the debt. We have some forensic auditing happening as we speak, but while we're waiting on those to be completed, and I'm advised that the first round will end somewhere in August, and so we will be able to complete assessment on one particular project towards the end of August. But in the meanwhile, I've given a commitment that we will prepare to start paying contractors whom we owe. And so sometime early next week, they should be invited into the division again, where they will sit and meet with principals trying to arrange our debt management, and we begin some sort of remuneration to those who didn't work for the THA. We also, beyond debt management, we have to look at, for the first time, setting up for Tobago something that is equivalent to the HSF, which is Heritage and Stabilization Fund, which is our rainy day fund, because I inherited a contingencies fund that was all but depleted, and so we need to save some monies for a rainy day. And you know, Trinidad and Tobago being a small island, we are as susceptible to some of the ills brought on by climate change and brought on by rising sea levels. The CDB estimates that it will take us $1.2 billion to be able to fix the windward coastline in Tobago. And that's a coastline that includes what's happening down at Pigeon Point, at the back of Kong Point, all the way up to Roxborough, Speyside, Shalville, $1.2 billion. And so we have to save for a rainy day, but we also have to put aside some monies for investments in infrastructure that will protect us against the ills of climate change. So quite a lot is actually happening in the space as we speak.
Mr. Augustine, you would of course mention the dispute resolution committee and stated, and you also stated that it's between 4.0% and 6.9%, which takes you at about a budget of in Trinidad at about $57 to $58 billion. And obviously you would have pegged your draft estimates hoping that the government does in fact give you all that you need in order to carry out some of these measures that you are intending to over the next fiscal year. Should you not get that amount of money, the obvious question is, what are you then going to do and how are you going to lobby? Because your party has lobbied, your political leader, he has lobbied a lot for the things, some of the things that you all enjoy in Tobago now. So what do you intend to do if you don't get that amount of money?
Well, for starters, if we don't get that amount of money, it will not be the first time that Tobago is denied what it asks for. In fact, every previous year we have been denied. And am I extra special? Perhaps I am. Is this government extra special? Perhaps it is. Is the central government inclined to give us more? I believe they are inclined to give us more. That could change though, but I believe they're inclined to give us more. But I made a point earlier on that Tobago has to start considering the question of what do we earn? What do we have to sell? What do we have that we can earn monies on outside of the subventions from the central government? Because I want to create a Tobago economy that is not dependent on what Imbert says in October. That's not dependent on whoever is Minister of Finance and what they say in October when they present a budget. The Tobago economy has to become so independent that it becomes insulated against whatever madness or maddeningness that is happening within the Trinidad space. That is the ultimate goal. We are not there yet, and it requires some more work from us, but we are certainly heading in that direction, which is the right direction.
Mr. Augustine, so you would have mentioned that you think that they are inclined, they being the central government, are more inclined to give Tobago what it has asked for by way of budgetary allocations. Why do you think that is so?
I think they are more inclined because, quite frankly, they see an executive in Tobago that is much more respectable, one that commands respect and attention from people. They have also seen their political fortunes wane on the island of Tobago. And they know the public of Tobago is distrustful of them and the work that they do because they have not delivered over the years on a promise to give us what we need. And so given the overwhelming victory received at the polls last year, in December, the government definitely would be inclined to give us much more than they give in the past, simply because if for no other reason, they need to curry favor us. They need to ensure that they keep on our good graces. And we understand fully well the politics at work nationally and inter-island wise, but we will push those politics aside for the betterment of the island of Tobago and in ensuring that Tobago gets what Tobago needs.
Well, that's one way of looking at it, but you can also look at it from this perspective. Wouldn't they be more inclined to give you less so that your administration may look bad, and in the end they can now come and play politics? Because you do have to take into account that they also have there is a PNM Tobago Council, and they are wanting to govern the THA once again.
Well, the thing is, that will work if the Tobago population, the Tobago electorate was not a smart one. The Tobago electorate is highly intellectual, extremely smart and crafty. And so the Tobago electorate will know that the reason why we can't get some of the things we desire will be because we have been denied it by the central government. And we will communicate that quite clear. We'll telegraph that quite sharply to the Tobago public and by extension the national public. So they will see how we are being treated. And no, I'm not blackmailing anyone. It's just that should we not get substantially sufficient funds to be able to manage Tobago's capital development more than anything else, then we will be left with no choice but to raise the facts of the matter with the public.
Let's look at your administration's relationship with Trinidad in terms of from a THA to central government point of view. Many people share the view that it's one that is controversial, that one that's very feisty, and many people share the view. In fact, the minority leader in Tobago, he mentioned the fact that you all should be a little more tame in terms of how you approach the central government in Trinidad. What are your views on that?
Well, tamed and phallic cannot go in the same sentence. You tame dogs, you tame wild animals, you tame wild horses, but you don't tame human beings. I've made a point quite clearly. You have to teach people how to treat you. And what we had over the last 21 years, for the vast majority of that, we had the same government in power in Tobago as in power in Trinidad. In fact, for 16 of the 21 years, PNM was in power in Tobago. PNM was also in power in Trinidad. They were friendly, they were nice to each other, they were in bed with each other, they were cut from the same cloth, and notwithstanding, Tobago still did not get what it needed. So no one can convince me that I need to suck up, that I need to lick someone's posterior in order to get what Tobago needs. No, you teach people how to treat you. Let's look at the political history of Tobago. The very first THA we got that when Tobago rejected PNM and voted DSC, voted a man called Ian Robinson and another man called Dr. Winston Murray. They were the ones who went to the parliament and stuck it out and ensured we got the first THA, two of them in a parliament of, 36 at the time, and we got the first THA. The second time Tobago got any upgrades to the law was for 1996, Act 40 of 1996. At that time, there was a coalition. It was 17-17-2. And the two seats of Tobago joined with Basdio Pandey, forming the coalition government of the day. And that's how we got the last set of upgrades to the THA Act. And since 2001, for the most part, we voted the same part in Tobago as we voted in Trinidad. And guess what? We got no substantial movement. So evidently, playing nice, licking someone bum, trying to suck up to someone, evidently that does not work in getting Tobago what Tobago needs. What gets Tobago what Tobago needs is being able to speak firmly, being able to be forthright with people, and teaching the central government exactly how we will be treated and what kinds of treatment we will accept.
Well, Mr. Augustine, we can't talk about the relationship between the THA and the central government without looking at autonomy. Now, very quickly, because we are running out of time, what is the nature of your conversations with you being the Chief Secretary, your Deputy Chief Secretary, and the Prime Minister and the government as a whole in terms of autonomy for Tobago?
Certainly, the conversation is about restarting that conversation, because you may be aware, sometime in 2020 into 2021, we had conversations about this autonomy bill being brought before the Parliament. And then that was put on hold. It was put on hold because Tobago largely rejected some of the provisions that were being offered. But that conversation is going to be restarted. We have, for the first time, as a standalone division, the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary. And a core function to the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary is that of treating with the matter of autonomy and prosecuting that case both in the public domain, the public square, and with our colleagues in Trinidad. We believe that, one, we have to embark on a significant education campaign down in Trinidad to get Trinidadians to understand exactly what we mean by greater autonomy and how that helps the country as a whole, and that this kind of devolution of powers that we seek is not new, it's not novel to the Commonwealth. It exists in St. Kitts Nevis, right in the Caribbean. You see it up in the United Kingdom itself, with the relationship between England and Scotland and Wales and Isle of Man and so on, and Northern Ireland. We also see outside of the Commonwealth other jurisdictions having similar approaches. Some people call it federation, call it whatever you want. We need to sit down as a country and correct a great historical wrong. And if people have to spend time and read the history and understand how we got together as a country called Trinidad and Tobago, what preceded it, the arguments that happened at the time, who got to what, who won where, if we are to sit down and to look at that closely, we will see that there is a need for us as a country, even as we approach our 60th anniversary, as we approach the 43rd year of the modern Tobago House of Assembly, we need to sit down and be honest about where we want to go as a post-colonial, enslaved society. And how do we move to the next place and become a mature democracy that is willing to devolve powers away from the center out to outlying regions. And part of the conversation too, if you may, will include upgrades to local government and all of those things. But the THA must be singled out as separate and apart.
Mr. Augustine, we are basically out of time, but my last question to you, in very, very short, how far does your administration intend to go in terms of getting autonomy for the people of Tobago?
We will not rest until we get it. In fact, even if I die, even if I'm removed from the seat, even if PDP is no longer in charge of the executive of Tobago, Tobago will not rest until it gets greater autonomy.
Mr. Augustine, thank you so very much for agreeing to the interview with us. Thank you. Well, you have been watching One and One here on WESN Content Capital. I am Kemuel Pascal. Thank you so very much for joining us.